But in the meantime, I've had an email from a Peugeot lady that I went down and read the code for. And she's emailed to say she's lost confidence in the car and she'd like to return it because if it needed a catalytic converter in 12 months' time, then she wouldn't be able to afford to put one on the car. Oh, quick update on the Peugeot 308. I've had an email from the lady this morning saying she does still want to return the Peugeot 308. She's spoken to her family over the weekend. They want to do it. So, as a lot of you said in the comments, probably getting really bad advice elsewhere that somehow a catalytic converter makes the car unreliable. Even if it is a cat, it might not be a cat at all. So yeah, but then she asked me if I could pick it up, and I said no, I'm afraid I can't. I work on my own. I don't actually. Mrs. Chop's away at the moment. She normally runs me around the place, and I said, well, Adrian can pick it up for you, and that would be £45 for him to pick it up and bring it here. I said, or you need to bring it here, and obviously I need to check it over for condition, make sure it hasn't accumulated any damage while it's been there, and obviously there'll be a deduction for the miles she's put on the car, plus a revaleting fee, and she brings it to me, mint, which is what I read to everyone before they take the car away and get them to sign to agree to as well. So I doubt there'll be a lot of mileage deduction. I don't think she's done a lot of miles on it. But yeah, I mean, really, if she wants to return the car, she does need to get it here, doesn't she? It's not up to me to go and pick it up. Yeah, different matter if it was actually broken down, but it's not. It's running, driving fine. It's got no codes on the dash. We don't even know that's going to come back again. So there's nothing stopping her from getting it here. I guess apart from inconvenience, but I don't see really why I should be inconvenienced. So it's a tiny bit of toughness from Chops. I always noticed I was running around in the Range Rover when I was going over and seeing her on Saturday and did that code read. You'll notice I was running around in the Range Rover because it's really weird. It's running absolutely fine when I drive it the rest of the time. There's only one place that it goes into limp mode. It's on the hill outside of South Melton on the dual carriageway. So I drove it around all week fine. I went to go to get breakfast with a friend, went up that very hill, and it went into limp mode. Really, really weird. So it has to be... I can absolutely floor it. I can go down these lanes, I can floor it up the hills, no problem at all. But it's for some reason it's this dual carriageway, this long continuous hill with a steady foot on the power and just gradually accelerating to overtake something, ping, it goes into limp mode. Unless there's something weird in that area that's interfering with my car's ECU, but I imagine it'd be doing... I've heard a story like that once before where someone had a problem in the same place every single time and it turned out there was something in the area that was affecting the car's ECU. I can't remember what it was, but someone told me that story. I'm sure they'll get back down in the comments and tell me if it was them. But yeah, so really weird. Everyday driving, absolutely fine. It's just that, one bit on that hill on the dual carriageway. Really weird. Still not taking it down to have it smoke tested yet. Now, I didn't actually show you the gift that the lady got me when she picked up that Peugeot 308. I forgot to tell you guys that. She came, picked the car up, put her hand in the bag and said, oh, I've got a gift for you. And I thought, oh, that's nice. I haven't had a gift from a customer in a while. And I'll show you what it was. It was a Bible. She gave me a Bible. She'd even actually marked a couple of passages for me in the Bible as well. That's a new one me. I've not had that before. No problem at all with religion. And obviously she thinks she's doing the right thing by giving me the Bible with the passages in. But yeah, I thought you guys would be interested. That's an absolute first for me. Never been given a Bible as a gift with a customer. I don't know if she now wants that back now that she's returned the car. I might offer it back to her, or that she intends to leave it with me anyway. I'll leave you to your own comments down below where someone might think that a car dealer needs a Bible. So a few of you have asked me what's been happening with the grey MGB with the MX-5 engine in it. And I was waiting till it all played out to update you on it. It didn't go well. So I said I was sending it off to a specialist to get the supercharger fitted, because I'd had my go at it. Hadn't got it quite set up. So I thought I'd just give it to professionals, get them to fit the supercharger for me. So I rang a local company and they recommended somebody. I had Adrian transport it up to him. That's why it's filthy, because it's been transported back now, covered in dirt. I had Adrian transport the car up to him, had a chat with the guy and said, this is what I want doing. I want the supercharger fitting. He said, I don't do tuning. He said, but I do the mechanicals and I'll get a tuner down and then he'll tune it for me. Great. So sent it up to him, and after a few days he rang me and he said, I want to do some stuff with the wiring loom. He said, because you've got both an MX-5 wiring loom and an MGB wiring loom in there, and I don't like the wiring, it's all over the place. He said, so I'd like to sort that before I start doing anything with the engine. And I said, okay, whatever you think is best. Then I came off the phone and I thought about it. I thought, is that wise? Because I'm spending money on something that was working, because obviously it was all working. I thought, am I blowing money I don't need to blow? Because if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But he wasn't happy with it, so I thought leave it to the professionals. Had a phone call about a week or so later. He said, done the wiring now, all set to go with the supercharging side of things. He said, I've sent you over the first invoice for the work so far, so if you can pay that up, we'll then move on. So I hopped onto my invoices. The invoice was £2,000. £2,000. Now, he'd sent me a picture of all this wiring loom just all piled up on the floor and said, this is everything we've pulled out of the car. And he said, yeah, and that was the bill, £2,000. I thought, Gordon Bennett, I mean, how much labour is that? Even at £100 an hour, that's 20 hours. So you're saying you basically spent the entire week just pulling wiring out the car. Now, I never tell anybody what their time is worth. I should have questioned how much it was going to be before. So at that point, I thought, well, that's all the money I was going to spend on having the supercharger fitted. If I'm £2,000 in now, by the time he's done the supercharger, I could be another £2,000 in. I can end up £5,000 or £6,000 just getting the supercharger fitted, and the supercharger itself cost me £1,500, way over the value of the vehicle. So I thought, my bad, I'll get the car back, and then I will either decide to pop it back up to him later, because he said didn't want to do the supercharger without the intercooler in there. Now, I believe that the intercooler just means that the car will run more efficiently and I'll produce more power. I wasn't bothered about having huge power, so I was going to leave the intercooler out because it took a lot of fabrication to fit it in. He said he wouldn't do it without the supercharger fitted. So I said, well, get it back. I'll have a look at, without the intercooler fitted. I said, get it back because that's just grunt work. I can fit an intercooler and then I'll decide if I want to put it back to you. For the moment, I'll just run it as a 1.6 normally aspirated again. I said, fine. So I sent Adrian to pick the car up, brought it back here. Hopped in the car and thought, he said, I've given it a base level just because it's got the M221 ECU in it. So it's the aftermarket ECU for the Mark 1 MX-5, and I believe they come with a map for a 1.6 MX-5 engine in. Anyway, so I thought I'd just see how it runs, because he says, I'd still like to tweak it some more, but it runs okay now. Now, obviously, when it went out there, to be fair to him, it wasn't running very well at all. It only just got on the trailer. So I took it for a spin, and it went better. It drove a lot better, but at about 4,000 RPM, it started popping and spitting again. Now, I drove it with no air intake on it at all, just the open throttle body. So there might be ports open that are stopping that from working as it should. So I need to put that back together and take it for another test drive. But anyway, so I got back and I thought, oh, I noticed I didn't have a stereo lit up, and I had no oil gauge, and I had no oil pressure and no water temperature. So I thought I'd check what else happened. Hit the hazard light, and I had smoke come out from underneath the dashboard, which obviously was worrying. So I immediately messaged him and said, look, I've had smoke come out from under the dashboard. I have to put the hazard lights on. And he rang me straight back, to be fair to him, and he said, oh, that's strange because we checked all that before he left. I'll come down to you on Saturday and have a look at it. A little bit later on, I got a message from him saying that he wouldn't be down until Wednesday to have a look at it. So I thought, while I'm here, I'll just check everything else. So I started flicking other switches, and it turned out I had no indicators, I had no reversing lights, I only had one headlight, I think it was. Had no horn. Obviously, like I said, the stereo wasn't working, and I didn't have anything going to the water temperature or the oil pressure anymore. So I did a little video for him with Pete showing all these things working, sent him the video, and he rang me straight back and he said, look, I need to explain to you, we didn't touch any of the wiring loom for any of the lighting. We only did the wiring loom for the engine. He said, we did the engine wiring loom, that's a chassis wiring loom. And if you want that done, it's obviously a different charge. We need to have a look at doing that. And I said, right, okay, I have to admit, I did think for £2,000 you'd be able to rewire an entire car. But, and again, I don't know what's involved, so I can't really comment on that. He did do wiring, like I say, Pete and I had the fuel pump running off the rear light because we'd taken the airflow meter off, which kicks the fuel pump in. So for the moment, we'd just taken the live off the rear light, so he did sort that out. So I said, well, I've got no stereo. He said, well, we decided to unwire that because we didn't like the wiring behind the stereo, and we put the ECU behind the panel now for where the stereo was. We put the ECU back there. We tucked it in underneath. So the ECU now is back here behind this panel here. And as you can see, I've got my hazard light switch there. I've got my stereo. I've got rear demister, that kind of thing. And I said, okay, well, he said, so we left that disconnected. I said, well, I've got no oil pressure or water temp anymore. I said, oh yeah, they're just cheap Chinese dials. We disconnected those. We didn't like those. We disconnected them. We thought we'd sort them out later on because obviously he thought he was going to be keeping hold of the car, do the rest of the work. So it's these two dials here he didn't like that he disconnected. so I don't have those anymore. I said, right, okay. I said, but I've got none of these other lights are working. He said, well, I don't think they could have been working in the first place. I said, well, they were, because I was driving the car around. And when I rebuilt this car, painted it with the home built guys, obviously we put all the lights back in again because we stripped them all out. And our process was, we went through and checked that are all working. Obviously, I don't drive cars around without working lights. He said, I didn't realise you'd been driving the car. I said, yeah, I did say I've been driving it around. Anyway, he said, well, get the car. He said, again, we haven't done anything with the wiring in for the lighting. We've only done it for the engine. Now, obviously, for me, I know MGBs really well. For one thing, you can't pull out the wiring for all because he wired it into the ignition barrel and all sorts of things as well. All the wiring for the MGB all runs behind the dashboard here. It's all behind here. So if you're fiddling with one bit, you're going to move other bits. Even if you don't intend to, you're going to knock other bits. So it could have been a simple case of something being knocked. Obviously, I wanted to know what the smoke was about as well. But yeah, I don't see how you could do one without disturbing the other. And the fact that all that lighting worked before, he's just done a load of wiring now, it doesn't work. I don't think I'm putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 10. I think it's quite obvious the pair are related. He said, well, we'll take a look and see if it's anything to do with what we've done. He said, get it transported up to me and I'll pay for it to be transported up. I said, I just want to be clear, I'm not expecting any bill because all this stuff was working before the car came up. And he said again, we'll check whether it's something we've done. Made me a bit nervous. So anyway, Adrian picked the car up, took it back up to the guys again. And to be fair to him, jumped straight on it. And a few days later, I got a video of all the lighting working again. And he said, one of your lights, you had a bad earth on. And he said the reason you had smoke underneath the dashboard is because your hazard fuse went and that smoked. He said, so they weren't two things we did. But again, at the end of the day, why did that do it? What wiring was touching each other underneath to cause that to happen? And why did we lose an earth off the rear light? But then he did put his hands up and say, it turned out that some of the wiring for the MGB and the MX-5 for the lighting was mixed together. So one was running the other. I don't know exactly what that was. I did find it a little concerning to spend £2,000 on wiring and for basic things like not to check after you pulled, you've got this picture of this, I might put it on screen, massive pile of wiring. You'd think basic checks afterwards would be make sure what else have we disturbed, check the rest of the lighting's actually working afterwards. And then obviously you could say, well, we weren't doing that side of things, we're just in the engine side of things, but you then obviously unplugged the stereo to put the ECU in, which had the hazard light switch on, and that wasn't working, the hazards weren't. And as you've gone along, there's a high likelihood that you will have disturbed other things, but it turns out that even though they were only working on, said they were only working on the engine side of wiring, some of it was connected to the lighting. So some of those checks really need to have been done before they come back to me. So I can't say I'm massively impressed. I mean, obviously for £2,000, if the car come back with lovely wiring all the way through, I still would have been a bit like, I didn't want to spend £2,000 on wiring. I wanted to get the supercharger fitted. But to do that and then obviously still have problems, not ideal. But at the end of the day, they have sorted it, and I guess you can only judge people on that side of things. You might have thoughts about how much their charges are, but their charges are their charges, and they have now sorted it out. But the trouble is, I'm £2,000 down. I'm back to where I started. I haven't got it supercharged, although I may well have better wiring that might make it easier to tune the car later on. It might make it easier, might have made it safer. I don't know if any of the wiring was unsafe, but yeah, that's where we are with the MG. I better go and find out who's trying to ring me. Now, in case you missed it, a reminder that the latest Raffle is now up and running, and I am going to raffle off the Fiat Barchetta over there. It's only got 11,000 miles, and it might even be 11,000 kilometres on it. It's got a fresh MOT on it. We've just done a cam belt on it. Worth probably about, I would say, probably 10k. I would say this is, based on the fact that 5k buys you a higher mileage, sort of tatty one. This one's only ever had one owner. Well, it's got 2 on the logbook because our subscriber put his name on there, didn't he, in between picking it up and dropping it off to me. Tickets are just £2.50. As always, we're going to give a proportion to charity. Now, I asked what charity, and a few of you reminded me that the Up and Down channel is doing Sophie's Legacy again. They did their 24-hour broadcast on his channel, didn't he? He always does it every year to raise money for Sophie's Legacy, and we did raise money for this charity before. So this one is in memory of the young girl who died from cancer, and the family set up this charity in order to support families that have children in hospital with accommodation and food and all kinds of bits and bobs like that. Fantastic charity. So if no one has any objections, we'll do that for this raffle. We'll donate a portion of the proceeds from the raffle to Sophie's legacy. So I'll put a link in the video description down below. People often ask, is there a cash alternative? I've got to say there is going to be one on this. I'm going to offer £5,000 as a cash alternative if you want the cash rather than the car. So £5,000 cash or the Fiat Barchetta, which you could probably sell for way more than that if you did get it. But yeah, I'll put a link in the video description down below.